Yeah. Let me drop exclusive game from my exclusive mind. You be out here chasing fame, I stay steady on my grind. Zero diamonds, zero.
Thank you for tapping into the Exclusive Minds podcast. Today we're going to be having an exclusive conversation with exclusive content from Exclusive Minds. I'm your host, Rook, and
Joe?
let's get right into it.
Get this going and get this going.
Yeah, 65.
All right. Welcome back to the Exclusive Minds podcast, episode 65.
Big episode 65.
And I'm trying to do video again for the first time in what seems like forever.
Yeah, because last time we didn't do it, right?
No, and quite frankly, I'm having problems to start here. What else is new?
It happens. We have a big episode today because we do have a very special guest while you are fooling around with that.
No, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. While you're fooling around with that,
everybody can see me now fumbling. And
well, I'll introduce him.
Fool of myself. All right, now we got the 2-camera shoot going. Holy mackerel!
Okay. Well, we have a special third guest, Raafi. Raafi here. You know.
Hello.
I'll let you. I'm always terrible at introductions.
Sure.
So I'll let you. Give a little brief introduction, and then we'll kind of dive into your history. And thank you again for pulling up super last minute. I know it was like you were at the grocery store or something like that. We were calling you on the way back from the coffee shop. We're like, yo, man, we're going to shoot a podcast today. You're like, oh, I'm right next to you, like 5 minutes away. So,
well, we talked about it for a while, so I always thought I'd be here at some point.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me.
Of course.
It's interesting, like, I think, like, in this era of media, like, making podcasts, making videos, it's like, I'm like a shoot first, ask questions later as far as like making stuff, just because I think so many people are in their heads about like, oh, can I, put stuff out there? Is it me? Do I just? And it's like, hey, 65 episodes, like you're getting better every single time. By the time you get to like 200, you're gonna have this. You know what I mean? It's like, so
just creating a process, and absolutely. And I think that you dropped a gem by saying shoot first and ask later, because I think that's a huge thing that people tend to not really. They're just like, I'm scared of even trying to do it. It's like, right. I want to make sure the cameras are correct. I want to have like a $1,000 Canon camera, $2,000 Canon camera.
Yeah, you can very easily overthink it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people don't like. I don't want to get made fun of if it's not whatever. You know what I mean? Whereas like we all start, like nobody was born out of their mother knowing how to shoot a camera or make an album or whatever the thing is. It's like you have to do it through process. So I mean, I would say, like, by way of introduction, I'm a creative person. I've done a lot of work in, whether it be film is my main kind of thing. I went to film school and I've been working in the industry for 20 years, graphic design. But in college, I used to have a rap group. We did 20 shows. I've on a film crew. I've done every single job. I've held the boom. I've AD'd. I've directed. I've cinematographed, pulled the focus, and any art directed. I've done every single job on set. And I've worked as a photographer, I've worked as a creative director, I've worked as a editor. So it's kind of like, to me, doing things is more important than like getting in your way. I think like culturally, like there's this whole idea of, if I don't have this pair of sneakers, then I can't play basketball. You know what I mean? And it's just like, actually playing basketball is what's going to get you good at it, and then the other things are additive to your process. So, like I'm on my YouTube channel, I'm always like, keep taking your ideas and making them. Like that's kind of one of my main things.
Absolutely, just being a creative and creating. I think that's a fantastic point. I want to go back, and you touched on it about just like kind of doing everything under the sun as far as like the creative and the film and everything like that goes. Talk to us, I guess, about what your early times and what got you into filmmaking and directing, creative, anything. Just how did it get to that point, and talk about, I guess, like the starting point or the pinnacle of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for film, to me, what it was is I'm born in D.C., grew up in D.C. during the 80s, so that's kind of, the crack era D.C., 85% black, Chocolate City, Marion Barry was the mayor. Went to public school, and then my mom got a new job in Boston. Her salary multiplied by like 4 or 5 times. All of a sudden, I was living in a white neighborhood, going to private school, like, my life just completely changed. And so that first year was very lonely. It's like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm at a different school in a different environment, all this kind of stuff. And I watched so many movies in 7th grade. I can't tell you how many movies I watched, and that was the connection. I could identify with this character or that. It would be a divorced man of 55, and I was like, I love this guy, you know. And so like that process of identifying with different characters really helped me understand how the world worked, and kind of saved me, quote unquote, or just kind of helped me relate to other people and help me understand myself. And so I always felt that if I could provide that to other people, especially kids like me who for whatever reason felt like they were out of place, if I could make something that made them feel a sense of identification on the screen, that would help them. Like I can remember seeing Boys in the Hood when I was like 16, and that was like the first time I'd ever seen a movie about a black teenage kid. And I was younger than the guys. They were say 16, 17, I was like 12, 13, but I was like, oh my God, somebody made a movie about a guy I could actually be. That was like a really powerful experience, and made me want to tell stories. And just, you know, just in general with my family, everybody is a jokester. Everybody tells a lot of stories. Like we wouldn't even watch TV after dinner. Like at my grandparents' house, someone would tell a story, then someone else, and we just stay up, you know, for hours cracking each other up. And it's like, well, that's what I like. That's what I'm good at. And it's like, well, how do you do that? And my mom was like, well, you know, you can go to school for that. I was like, you can go to school for that? You know? Yeah. So that kind of led me to the industry and figuring out what I could do in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's very, like, well, that's awesome. It sounds like she was very supportive of you kind of pursuing, like, the film thing. Because a lot of the times you hear, you know, I hear, oh, you shouldn't do the film, or you shouldn't do like illustration or anything like that because there's no money to be made. It's super competitive. It doesn't sound like you had any of those problems. It sounds like it was more, you know, like, hey, if you want to do it, you know, chase after it. Yeah. Or is that fair to say? I don't want to put.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, both my parents worked in creative fields. My mom more as a manager, my dad more as like talent. He was on the radio for over 40 years in DC. So there was always an understanding of like, doing a creative thing is like part of the world, and you got to work hard, you got to chase after it. There's going to be all kinds of obstacles, of course, but like just do it, you know. And you can, you know, get the training, get the knowledge, and then do it. And not to say that it hasn't hard, not to say that there weren't, you know, times when my credit card bill was ballooning into the tens of thousands of dollars and all that kind of stuff, but like at the same time, even in film school, I remember like I'd meet these kids and I'd be like, why are you in film school? And they were like, well, you know, I want to get rich and famous and have lots of girls. And I was just
wrong
like,
reason.
I was like, what's your favorite movie? You know, like, whereas like, it was, so I knew like there were kids there. I was like, this person's never going to make a film. Like I already know, you know, we're all 21, 22 years old, but I was like, this person's never going to make a movie. Whereas the 2 or 3 people who like loved it, who just wanted to know, how was this shot? You know, who wrote the script for this? You know, who are really into it are the people who are still working in the industry, who still love it. And I just found that it's hard, but you can find the people who have the passion to do a thing, and if you surround yourself with those people and you're willing to put the effort in, you can find your way into it.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. I think that, like, you know, chasing anything that you believe in, it's always been a theme of this show. It's just like chasing something, even if it's not going to pay you, you know, super like crazy tons of money. Like you said, the people want to become rich and famous and everything like that. As long as you're chasing after something that genuinely makes you happy, that's the fulfillment that you're kind of looking after. So you said you went to college for it. You were at college at this time, 21, 22. What's the next step after this? Like, did you have any like internships? Did you, you know, kind of just throw your applications out there? Were you still doing stuff like you know, freelancing on the side, just kind of building your portfolio? What's the steps during the whole college era?
So I went to college, then I went to grad school.
Okay.
And for film school in DC at Howard. I went to Brown University for undergrad, where I did film. And you know, back in those days, both college and film school, I was in the last class of my school where we actually shot on 16 millimeter film. The next class, both years, shot on digital video. Okay. So the experience of shooting with film teaches you a lot of things about discipline. First of all, like, you know, a 100-foot roll of film is 2.5 minutes of time. So you have to be and it costs $30 for the roll and $30 to process the roll. So you're spending $60 for 2.5 minutes. 400-foot roll is it was a little bit more affordable, but you know, that's what they call it, footage, is how many feet, you know, feet of footage you're rolling. But it teaches you, like nowadays when you got, you know, guys who come up in video, they're just willy-nilly shooting all day, like, oh, I'll edit it later. It's like you're just wasting time. we luckily came under the experience of like plan everything, get it down. What are you going to shoot? What's the angle? What are you telling the actors? Then you roll the camera and you cut it. You don't waste anything. So I loved that discipline. But I'm the type of person, and you've probably just for knowing me, it's like I throw my whole body at anything that I do. Like I'm like I'll burn the midnight oil is like a lifestyle for me. Like I just when I'm really passionate about something, I just go after it with everything that I have. And not everybody has that. I'm lucky to just kind of have that kind of work ethic, I guess. And so it was just kind of like in film school, you kind of naturally group with the people who are working super hard. My school, I was one of the better. I was the best student.
Talk that shit.
Yeah. No, I mean, the best student the year above me got nominated for an Oscar. So he's he's a big time guy, Bradford Young, one of the most brilliant, talented people you'll ever meet.
Okay.
He shot my thesis film. We worked on a lot of projects those first, say, like 7 years of our career till he started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But one of the things about it was like the school was like, hey, you're a good student. Like, here's apply for this. We'll back you for this.
Okay. That's good that they provided like that encouragement to go after stuff, because I know like at my school, it wasn't necessarily like that, or at least it didn't come across that way of like, he just was like, hey, here's a career fair. If you want to go to it, go to it. If not, it's like good that they encourage you to do that. So
But that was, I was honestly like going to Howard for grad school, which is a historically black college, versus going to Brown, which is an Ivy League school, but like the way I was like the black kid in every class. So it was just kind of like, like I was always kind of like, oh, is that a black thing that you do? It wasn't like that much encouragement, what I mean? Whereas at Howard, they were like, you're good, go, so like that environment was very useful as far as like not just being like the minority, but like kind of just being your whole self, like every day that you're working. And so the biggest early break was they gave this big award to Spike Lee. He came to town. And I was like, at the time, like I won like 5 awards that year or whatever. And they were like, Spike came up to me and he was like, I need interns this summer for my movie 25th Hour.
Cool. Yep.
So I went up, I asked my mom for money and, worked for Spike for, I think it was 8-10 weeks in the post-production department on 25th Hour. I'm on the credit. I'm like way down in the credits, but I'm in the, film credits.
And how was working with Spike?
It was awesome. I mean, it was one of the coolest things about it. Honestly, I was in the editing department, so we would watch the dailies every day, and which is the footage that they shot that day or the previous day. And so it would be Spike, this guy Rodrigo Prieto, his cinematographer, who's been nominated for 2 Oscars since then. But that was Rodrigo's first film in America. He's from Mexico. Barry Alexander Brown, who's this kind of slight, glasses wearing white dude from Alabama, who's the editor. And then it would be like John Killick, Spike's producer. He's been on half of his films, and then like 2 other people and me. And so like the 7 of us would just watch the footage every single day. And half the time they were talking about they had a softball team. The production had a softball team. So, Sex and the City was still shooting. Show Rescue Me with Dennis Leary was shooting. What's the show, the home makeover show? One of those ones.
Like HGTV or something?
Yeah, it was
like
the 5 guys who would like make over your house.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about.
So anyway, every production in New York had like a softball team. So like they'd be watching the footage and they'd be like, yo, remember when Barry hit that double last night? Like it was like the whole time they were like, watching the footage, they were talking about softball. And I was like, oh, like you don't have to be so serious to do this. Like you have to be serious enough to do it and care and be good. But like it's also your life, and so you can't, like, as a young person, you're so dominating every thought. It's like, how do I get better, and what does this mean? But it's like actually you burn out of energy if the only thing you're doing is the thing. Like you need that kind of lighter enjoyment and stuff like that. So I remember one time, like we were watching dailies. It's a scene where Rosario Dawson, Edward Norton, like meet at this park at night, and there's this like tire swing, and she's sitting on the swing, and he comes up to her, says something, and he walks off. And so when you're watching the dailies, you're watching every camera, A camera, B camera, C camera. You can hear the walkie-talkies, and so they're just talking softball, blah blah blah. And then you hear Spike come on the walkies, and he's like, hey Rodrigo, tilt down. And it was like the end of the shot, and Rosario walks out of the shot, and then Rodrigo's camera tilts down to the tire swing in the front of the shot. And it was just like a beautiful shot. It made it into the movie, and it was just like, well, there he is, Spike Lee, the director. It's like just as serious as he is about softball, he is about making films. And to me, that was like the kind of magic moment of like, do it with all integrity of your soul, but also be your whole self at all times.
Like, it sounds like it sounds like the underlying message is like the quite literal expression of keeping the main thing, but then also allowing yourself to indulge in those, you know, softball or whatever it is. And I definitely relate to what you said about, you know, keep it like the only thing on your mind can sometimes just be work. How do I become the best? How do I just like, you know, make as much money as possible, do whatever. Like, that seems to be the only thing at times, like, all you're thinking about. But in order to allow yourself to kind of escape and have that enjoyment, but also, you know, produce at the same time, it takes definitely a certain set of skills of like, hey, I could also, you know, talk about softball with the guys while I'm at work, or do whatever the case is. So.
Yeah, it's like you can't be in the gym 24/7, right? You know, your muscles get tired, right? You have to take a day off. This is leg day. This is, you know, like you need rest as a part of the equation of success. So finding that balance is not to say that you don't work hard. I know plenty of people who don't do that, and where are they now kind of thing. But it's like you do that, but rest is part of how you're able to do it over a much longer time.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I think that, like, you know, excuse me, you said that's like your first opportunity. Did you say that was your first opportunity for like a break, kind of, or is that like the real first time that like you were like, okay, this is where I could see myself definitely taking direction? Or what would you say as far as interning for Spike in that moment? What would you say in your career was that like, I could definitely see myself doing this for a longer time? Yeah.
It was just seeing it really happen, like a real movie, you know, like in film school, you know, you're doing stuff with 5 other kids your age. You're making tons of mistakes. Your teacher's teaching you stuff, and then you go do it, and half the time it goes wrong. So to see the people doing it at the highest level, what they do, how much of what they do is similar to what it is that you're doing, and how much of it is different, was interesting for me, and also just to see like the humanity of it all. That it's real people doing it. I think a lot of times when we go back to what we were saying at the beginning, like people don't have the encouragement. It's like we think that, you know, movies came out of nowhere. Yeah. We think that the clothes came out of nowhere. It's like, no, I'm sitting around 2 of the best clothing guys I know, right? I'm sitting, you know, it's like, you know, to me, that's the game is like finding the humanity in it and just doing that and being that, as opposed to like this abstract layer, like where did these Nikes come from, where did this iPhone came from? Well, there's like a bunch of people who are like putting the iPhone together, and that's where it came from.
Yeah, and you hear about how long these things actually take into production. Like for us, it's like for us, for example, right, you're just like, oh, every year is going to have that new iPhone, but it's like, no, there's like 18 people on the design team, 25 people on the marketing team, and their whole life work might only be just one phone. There might just be, and we're just so accustomed to like, oh, we're gonna get that next year, or like, oh, well, my phone plan doesn't allow me to get it for another 2 years, so we'll see what the new phone is. It's like you don't truly understand the level of work that goes into a specific product, whether it be physical or like a tangible thing versus a, you know, on-screen kind of camera thing. And earlier you mentioned something that was also true, and it probably made you cringe when we went over to your house, was like we're just like aimlessly shooting around, and you're like over here like, all right, 200 or 100 foot of film is like this, you know, the exact measurements. We're just at your house like filming around. So you know, it's great that you have that deep understanding, because I feel like a lot of people don't care, or at least they don't have that knowledge of what goes into it and what like the A through Z steps are to make something. So it's good to have that, you know what I mean?
I think people get complacent in this day and age to just shoot, or whatever, record without any sort of focus, and you end up losing in it. If you're in a bad habit, right, it just kind of rinses and repeats, where having some focus and having some dedication to the art makes sense for sure.
It definitely makes sense. And, you know, having, you know, me and you talk about it all the time, having the greatest thing at your fingertips being your phone to be able to shoot. It's like knowing that that's a a gift to have that at your disposal. It's like so undervalued. I feel like even in graphic design, like now there's a new tool in Photoshop. Well, not new. It's probably like 6 months old at this point. It's like the generative AI thing. Yeah. It's like before you had to go through with the pen tool and track everything around it. Now you could just click, focus subject, remove background, and it's like a 2-step process. Before you kind of had to, put the time in and get like master the pen tool or master the, the point tool. But that's off topic. I want to get back to the story. I apologize. No. So after the Spike Lee, tell us.
Really?
Wow. Well, I guess we'll just go audio only. I don't know if it's shut off or not. This is back to the process. We're taking you behind the scenes here. We're telling you about the process. Yes. I want to talk about after the Spike Lee thing. So where are we at now after the fact that you did the internship for a couple weeks?
So it was like a summer internship, and then I and Spike was like, "You're leaving," and I was just like, "I can't afford to stay in New York." With no job. I think I got paid $90 for like 2 months on that show, but
they won't cut it in New York. No.
But it was just a great experience in terms of learning. So then I made my kind of thesis film in film school after that, which was like a kind of big project as far as like, okay, like now let me try and do something bigger. And it was a cool project in that it was definitely like the biggest project that had come out of our school at that time. Like we got an article in the Washington Post, and we rented this big light from the, Washington Source, and we not shut down, but we had like a generator, and we had all this stuff that nobody in our school necessarily would do on their projects. And so that taught me about the idea of putting together a big project of how many things you have to plan out in advance, how many hearts and minds you have to win, raising money, like all these kinds of things that still serve me to this day. And after that project, which played at least one film festival, a big film festival in DC, it was kind of like, I call it my lost year. I was like 23, 24, and like I was planning things and hanging out in bars with friends and didn't do anything for a whole year. And, like I was working freelance, but I wasn't like actually productive, Okay. And so that taught me, this thing of like, you can waste a lot of time talking about what you're going to do.
Right. There you go. Yeah.
And so after that, like my buddy who was the producer on my film, and we were really happy about that project. We were like, we should just keep working together. And we started a business. I moved to New York, and he had already moved back to New York. And so we just got an LLC, got a bank account, got a, and it was like the day after we like filed our business paperwork, the first client called, and they're like, hey, this ad agency I'd been doing some editing work for was like, we know you want to shoot stuff. Here's a campaign for the Maryland Lottery. Do you want to shoot it? And so we came down for, I think, 6 weeks. Both of us, my dad lived in D.C. His parents were from D.C., so we had places to stay, and we worked out of Baltimore. And so it was almost like from the second I formed a business, I've been working freelance or independently ever since. And not to say that there haven't been tough moments, not to say that, your bank account some days is hurting. It's like, it's dry. The field is, but all that to say that this kind of idea of going to clients, showing here's what I'm able to do, pitching ideas, selling ideas. I've been lucky to, I probably worked in 30 different states, maybe 5 different countries, for clients, going on shoots, going on various things. As an editor, I've probably edited at least 2 feature films, been a part editor on another. I've directed 2 feature films. I've made multiple shorts, 10, 12 music videos. Like you just, like I said, I just keep going, keep making stuff.
Keep laying the bricks down, and building
T-shirts, baseball caps. We're
gonna get into that. We're definitely get into it because there's a lot to break down there. So I want to go back, and you kind of touched on it. So you moved to New York. You said, was that like a big deal for you? Obviously, moving to back to New York after the internship with your friend. Did you guys have like any idea that the Maryland Lottery was going to come to you guys, or was it just like, it was just completely off the cuff? Like, it was just like,
I mean, and I would say like, first of all, like, I came back after the internship, and I was in DC for another year and a half, and I kept being like, oh, in Brooklyn, it's this, you can go to a place and they play hip hop at the bar, like I was like always, and this, I remember I was on a date, I think, and this girl was like, "Why don't you just move to New York?" I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea."
Yeah.
So then I that was kind of, and I count like, you know, probably like 5 best decisions of my life. I would say moving to New York, buying a skateboard at 28 years old, buying a Canon 5D Mark II camera, and buying a car and going on a road trip in 2020. Those 4 of the top 5. I don't know what. I'll leave the last slot open. But kind of that idea of betting on yourself, chasing after the thing that you're trying to do.
I was gonna say, are you a gambling man? Like so typically like moving to New York and doing all these things. Like obviously it paid out in your favor. That definitely had some risk to it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that first year being so stressed out and being like, yo, how am I ever gonna make money? And I would like grab one little edit job and that would make me whole for the rest of the month, and it would be like, oh, how am I gonna make money? And I was talking to my roommate at the time, and I was like, I talk about money a lot, and he's like, yeah. And so then I just kind of stopped doing it. A friend of mine told me this about mountain biking. He's like, I personally hate mountain biking.
Oh, you're talking to the wrong guy. This guy loves the biking. Well, not mountain biking, but biking.
I like biking, but if you're riding down a mountain, there's rocks. The brakes don't work. You can't. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna go overhead. I've fallen off a mountain bike, and and a buddy of mine was like, yeah, if you're on a mountain bike, you can't look at the pitfall in front of you because then you're gonna hit it. You have to look down the mountain in order to like keep going. And so to me, like that lesson of like stressing out about money, about like how am I going to make it through this, is only going to focus you on like that pitfall as opposed to like how am I going to get past all of this to what I really want. Like that's the thing you should be focusing on. So that's a lesson I have to reteach myself again and again and again because when you don't have no bread, it's tough. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But trying to kind of stay focused on what is it that I can do right now to improve the thing, what is it that I can do right now that's going to set me up better for the future. That's as much as I try to relearn that lesson again and again.
Absolutely, and I keep saying I relate, but like everything you're saying, it just like makes complete sense because I was in the same situation as you. I felt like last year, I was in between jobs, was working with my dad, but working with my dad, it was more of a summer thing, spring thing, and it was like dead winter. We had no work going on, and I was just talking to my girlfriend Taylor like earlier this week. I was like, during that time, it just felt like everything was just like one day. Like I remember like looking at the calendar and then I was like, oh my God, like the beginning of the month I'm gonna have to make my student loan payment and everything like that. And I kept looking at these days and like I felt like 3 months or 2 months of my time was just like condensed. And I was like only thinking, I was like, oh, here comes the 7th. I'm gonna have to, cut that check of $1,000, whatever it is, to
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, exactly. Like I gotta, get ready for this day. And I just genuinely just, it sucked because you're just in your head thinking about it over and over again. And it's like, you don't, not to say that those problems aren't the same. It's just like you just keep shifting the goalpost every single time. Like, oh, now I got a job and I'm thinking about, I'm going to go to that next thing. I'm going to get a, car or get a house, just like you just keep shifting the goalpost of what it is that you're trying to get. So just, you just learn to not judge a person based off of the current situation that they're in because you don't know what it's, what it took to even get them to that point. You know what I mean? So,
Like I remember there was a point in my 20s, like happened twice. Like when that first year in New York, where like I literally woke up out of a stone sleep, screaming. Like I just woke up like just because there was just so much pressure, and. And I was like, my credit cards are going crazy, and I was, I thought I was, and I was just like trying to, and then.
There you go.
And also like as a young person, there's a lot of social pressure to like hang out and go to the cool thing, and that's going to cost you this, and it's like like I can't do that type of thing, and all that, which doesn't necessarily go away, but you certainly feel it, I think, a little bit more when you don't have as much confidence in what it is that you're doing and trying to do. So kind of like to me, like half of the game is like it's like this internal thing. It's like who am I? What am I doing? Is my process good? Like, did I, how can I do better here? And just trying to figure out your own thing, because the external pressure is never going to go away. And like how you kind of balance internally, to me at least, is how I made it through some tight places. And but also that way of kind of looking at whatever the pieces on the chessboard or the puzzle pieces or whatever, and just seeing how you're going to fit them together. It's like those also are like how you make your moves. Like a buddy of mine once said, he was just like, it's like playing dominoes. It's like I'm saving up my dominoes, but it's like when I'm ready to slap down for a 25, like it's like I'm ready because I've just analyzed the whole thing and knowing when to strike when you have those moments.
Being more strategic about it and talking about money. This is why we do the podcast, because I'm just so good at transitions. Talking about money and budgeting and everything like that. You talked to me before about having, during your freelance time and your work, about having these super high budgets and like super low budgets. Talk to us about, any like of the moments of like those higher pressure situations where you had to direct like a whole crew of people, and, the moments where it's just kind of off the cuff like we did 2 weeks ago. It's just like the homies hanging out, shooting, and the differences between the two.
Yeah, I mean, I think that saying, Notorious B.I.G., more money, more problems. Like definitely the biggest shoot I had was directed a kind of 45-minute documentary for Prudential through their ad agency. The budget was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that like those people were on me every day from the time they awarded the job. I was so happy, like I did this pitch, won the job, and they were like, okay, now we got to go to Prudential and like pitch them again, and it was a great process, but at the same time, it's like they're not doing this to like applaud you for being a creative person. They're doing this because they have a kind of business goal, and this story is supposed to help them achieve that goal.
Stuff, whatever it is. Yeah.
And reach a new audience, and whatever the thing that their kind of business goal is. So you're kind of like the thing about doing any kind of creative job as a surface, which is like advertising, which is 2/3 of my career has been more advertising than pure like this is my personal expression of my thing. It's like, well, the client has an opinion, and they're going to be on you the entire time. From the whatever the time you walk on set until you leave, and so. A buddy of mine who works on a lot of sets, he was like, yeah, on commercials, like I've seen the clients just like wither the director down to nothing, and where they're just like, what do you think, guys? And they're basically essentially like a conduit to let the client's ideas in. And so you're always trying to battle this idea of, here's the thing that I think is good based on my expertise. None of these people have this expertise. I've been on set a million times. This is what I think is good. And you're trying to protect that for them. And it's not, if you're doing it just for your own reel or this one cool shot that you're going to get that, that's a bad thing. That's like, the basketball players who are shooting their shot instead of passing,
Sure.
So it's like, you're like, I'm trying to help get this thing to be the thing that you want, but you also have to be tough in that. And so there's a natural tension. Just in general with film, I would say, my thing, like my dream job, when I was 8 years old and like my whole childhood was like quarterback in the NFL, right? Just like the clock is going, there's 5 different groups you got to talk. You got to talk to the receivers, the running backs, the line. You got to, you know what I mean?
Coordinate everything.
And and the clock is running. You got to take these guys all the way down, score, right? And then you got to do it again. And like being on set is like that. It's like you got to get these people in and out in 10 hours. Period. Because once you hit 10 hours, everybody goes into OT, overtime, which means the half hour of overtime, their rates go up to this. Hour of overtime, guys are getting double pay. The client, your producer, everybody's going to be on you if you
pressuring you to like crunch time. You know what I mean?
If you don't make your day, so you have to be able to like get, and in this case, it's the art director and the camera guys and the actors and the client to a certain extent. You have to kind of manage that, get your shots, and get it in 10 hours. Otherwise, there's going to be problems. And so To me, that's what I love about it. You're on your feet all day. You're talking to people. You have your shot list, whatever it is you're going to do. We need to get to this, it's, on a big shoot, like there's 50 people on set, something like that. You have an assistant director who is, they're not actually your assistant, which is a weird misnomer of assistant director.
Okay.
The assistant director is essentially like the producer's assistant. So the assistant director looks at the schedule and say, hey, we're off schedule. Like, so their job is to kind of press you for the sake of the producer, but their job is also to yell and be an a-hole to everybody. Hey guys, so the AD is like, helps you move forward, but is also like kind of a check and balance on the director. So the ADs are going to come to you like, hey, look, we're 20 minutes behind here. What are we going to do? We got to get to lunch, by this shot. And it's like, okay. So you're kind of constantly negotiating with the ADs of like, all right, look, I'm going to do this close up. We're just going to do it in one take. We'll do it like this, or we'll combine these two shots like that. So you're kind of like, seeing the whole matrix, and that pressure is kind of, that saying pressure makes diamonds. Like, that's kind of what makes it good. I was just about to ask you that. Yeah. Yeah. On a good day on set, to me, I don't agree with the idea that like work should be fun. Like, I want to have fun because we're doing good work. So like, if everybody feels like we're doing the thing, like nobody's out there smoking cigarettes and waiting for the sun to, it's like, no. We're like, if we're waiting for the sun, it's the light is set up, the balance, the clothes, everything's ready for that shot, but basically not being wasteful at all. And to me, like, another sports metaphor, it's just like, you watch a soccer game or something like that. Like, those guys are running the entire time. And it must be so fun. Like, when I played soccer as a kid, or any sport, it's like, it's so fun to just be out there. But you're working the whole time. Like, I want it to feel like that there's a flow to it. You love it because you're doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing, but you're doing a thing. You're not just, sitting here messing around. Okay.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Two things. One on that note, and then I wanted to ask a question to both of you, so I'll ask both of them. We'll start with the first question first. So the first thing I was going to say is, you talked about how like some directors get diminished into nothing, and from me knowing you, it sounds like you always had like a great relationship of like knowing that you're the creative person. How do you stay true to that? You answered it a little bit, but like, have you ever had to like fire someone, or like you as the creative, have you ever fired like a production, like, hey, I don't want to continue this anymore, or you just always were just like kind of established that like up front of like, hey, I'm the creative person, you're the the producer? And
yeah, I mean, I've definitely fired crew members, but I've never fired a client before.
Okay.
But I try not. To me, you don't want to have a blow up on set. And I've been on sets as a crew member and as a director where the feeling gets too tense, and then it doesn't feel like fun. Then you definitely feel like you're at your job. So to me, like, how do you maintain that balance of like, even if things aren't going your way, that doesn't permeate to the crew, and so just trying to, or if there's every now and then there's a crew member who's just like, why are we here? There's a lot of grumpy guys, like, grips and electrics, tend to be, wow, now they want to do this, and it's just like trying to like identify the person that's the source of the bad vibe and checking them early, like, hey man, like, here's what we're doing. We changed the thing. I know that's an inconvenience. I need you to be with me on this, and like just really trying to address the problem early.
Be proactive versus reactive, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. Maybe I'm just generalizing or just stereotyping, but I'm wondering. I've always had this vision that creatives are obviously self-confident, but at the same time, I would imagine in a team environment, it sometimes could be challenging because you don't want anybody trying to push their agenda on you and sort of overlap your thought and vision and creativity. And it sounds like, early on, right, from your film school days, right, you sort of were kind of at the tip of the spear or the leadership position, and there were others that clearly were going through the motions, are probably the ones that became more of the sit in a chair and maybe just edit a specific section of thing, and there's the creativity was maybe not there. So I'm wondering how's that balance, especially, I mean, it sounds like you have a good handle on it, but are or do you find that there is increased levels of conflict with others who have different views? And
yeah, I mean, I definitely had I've had conflicts on set, and a lot of times that comes when there's not like a clear delineation of who's in charge, or somebody gets too big for their britches. Maybe I've gotten too big for my britches, frankly. But you're in a situation where somebody thinks that they have more power control than they should have or do have, and so ultimately, like my mom has this metaphor. She was a manager in business for many years, and she was just like, I would have a meeting. This is my mom. I'd have a meeting, and I learned that like I have a gorilla suit in my closet, and it's not enough for people to know that the gorilla suit exists in the closet. She was like, I would leave the closet door open so they could see the gorilla suit. And if the person is getting too crazy, then I'll just walk over to the closet and, maybe start putting my arm in the gorilla suit and still, have the meeting normally. But, it's like, do I need to put the other arm on? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like trying to find a way to exert, like, whatever power you have or not without having it be, like, about crushing a person. Because I've worked on sets with people who were like that. They just grind people into dust, and that's their whole style.
Yep.
It works as far as nobody gets out of line, but it's not fun. And versus I've had times where a guy starts being like, well, I was on this call one time, and it was like the gaffer. It wasn't even like the cinematographer, which the gaffer is like the chief lighting person. And they're like, well, that wouldn't work because this. And it was like the client was there, the producer was there, the funder was there, and like the gaffer's like telling me the shot won't work. And I was like, listen, this is the shot. Your job is to make it work. And like kind of just, figuring out how to like get in there and address the situation directly, to me, even if it makes an uncomfortable moment at that time, it's going to pay dividends in more general comfort over the course. Because when you let things bubble, and the couple times where I have like had to snap on somebody on set, it's because I was letting a thing slide, and then it's in your face, and like it just cascades into this much bigger problem than it could have been. Mm-hmm. So but to answer your other question, naturally creative people are strong-willed, have like points of view. And that's, part of it is, part of my, on a set, like the most popular person is the cinematographer. Like everybody loves the cinematographer because they do the camera work and they look cool and they always have cool clothes and they're the artist and you're just the kind of like the manager. And so like, there's often a tension between the director and the cinematographer in terms of like, we need 5 more minutes to get, whatever. And there's that famous clip of, Christian Bale yelling at the guy, right? He's tweaking a light in between shots, and it's like, after a certain point, like you need to make sure that like everybody's focused on the goal, which is getting the shot, getting through the day, and so when you have those tensions between, say, a cinematographer or another, department head, it's always like trying to make sure everyone's focused on the same thing, and that's the thing that you're doing. And even if it's like some of my best days on set, it's like I had a shoot once, and also a huge day, 50 people on set.
Wow. Okay.
25 extras, steady cam, like it was a 17-hour day. We knew we were going to go overtime that day. So everybody's on board for a long day. And we get on the set. Within an hour, like my producer, there's like a little pool of water on this wood floor. My producer slips and falls and has to go to the hospital. In the first hour of the day. And so it was like, it was, is she all right? Who's coming? Who's with her? Like, we still got to, and we had to shoot, it was a night shoot, so we were starting at like, say, 5 p.m. or whatever, I don't remember what time, but we had to wrap by 5 a.m. because the sun came up and that was going to ruin our shot. And so we were, running the whole, all evening, and my AD comes over and is like, hey, just so you know, like, we're an hour and a half behind. And I was just like, okay. He's like, so what are we going to cut out? What are we going to not do? And I was like, well, you know, in my head, it's like, we can't not do any of this. Like, it's all in the movie. But I met with the cinematographer and his gaffer, who was my roommate for many years and one of my best friends. And we just kind of looked at the shot list and said, well, here's what we can cut. Here's what we can combine. We broke for lunch, and, you know, the whole crew goes to lunch, and those guys stayed with me, and we just like kind of, you know, thought about it, talked through it. They were, you know, the DPs, the director of photography is like moving lights, which is, you never see that. Like, you know, he is like setting up lights, you know, it was like the three of us. It was like a film school type of moment. We're like, all right, like, let's just get this next thing. And our set photographer that day, we happened to have a set photographer, had a Mark II Canon 5D, which shoots HD video. And I went over to the guy and I was like, you're the second unit director of photography. Take the actors. You're going to go do a scene like this party scene that wasn't as important as the other scenes. You go shoot that scene by yourself. I'll pop in like 3 times to make sure it's cool, but we need to set up this other scene. And so that got us back to the hour and a half. We go shoot the next scene. Yeah. We could hear them in there partying, and they're like, what's going on? And I was just, you know, I was like, it's fine. We shot our scene, and it was just like the last take, we get it. And I was like, perfect, that's it. That's a wrap. And it was just like, literally like 2 seconds after I called cut, the sun like crept over the horizon and shot into the room. And it was just like, you know, that was an example of like, the pressure's on, but everybody comes together because we all seeing the same thing, seeing the game the same way, and fighting. Your
Tom Brady, Belichick, you know, Pat Long, Hail Mary to Gronkowski moment, you know, kind of going down there. Awesome. No, I mean, you know, it sounds like, you know, you have a good grasp of just letting the slack go to the creatives too, even when we're doing our shoots, of just like letting the photographer kind of be like, hey, you take the direction, I have the vision for what it is, but you kind of, you know, take the shot, whatever you think it is, and just like letting the reins go a little bit. You know, it's always a good thing. My second question was to both of you guys, kind of going off topic, or not going off topic, but going in a little bit of a different direction. As a freelance guy, you know, we often talk about, you know, being on your own schedule and you working from home, kind of doing your own, like having your own schedule. How do you guys manage your time, and what do you do to kind of stay, you know, making sure that the main thing's the main thing? And, you know, it could, like, we often talk about, like, you know, I could, if you wanted to, like, I'm like, yo, can you stay in bed till like 9 o'clock and like when you're working from your house or whatever? And I always say to you, like, you know, what keeps you guys, you know, what's your routine, and how do you kind of manage your own schedules? I guess I don't know who wants to answer that one first. But.
Yeah. I want to hear what Joe has to say. I'm trying to learn how to do this better.
So, I mean, it's a challenge for sure, right? So, I mean, working from home, I've been doing it for, gosh, I don't know, eons, it seems like. So, I do remember that when I first got my very first work at home job, for the first 3 months, I would get up and I'd still get dressed up and wear a suit. And at the time it was suits, but I mean, I would wear a tie in my office, right?
No way.
And it took me about 3 months to kind of get over that. And I would pretty much be regimented from 9 to 5, parked in front of the computer, trying to just do as if I were in an office. I think what you find is when you're working from home, at least, you have to have some discipline for sure, right? Because it could very easily spiral out of control because you have all the freedom in the world. But the reality is you quickly realize that, sure, you could sleep until 9 or 9:30, but you're probably going to be up until 11 o'clock at night catching up on the work that you might have missed, right? So it's good and bad, right? You have that ability, right? If my son's sick or I have to pick somebody up at school or whatever it might be, right? You can sneak out for that time, but you're going to have to make up for it, right? That's, you know, we had that conversation about trying to get a project done on time, and if you go over, you have to figure out how to tighten it up. So you deal with that, but you do have the flexibility, and I think it's just a better way of living, right? And I think people kind of discovered that with COVID when they all got sent home. The thing that is lost, and it's a challenge that I know that our companies face, and I'm sure others have faced, is that there also is a significant knowledge transfer when you're around your peers, right? In your industry, you need it, right? Yeah. You have to be in touch with sales. a lot of it's me, right? It's me and my built-in knowledge, but I didn't get that knowledge by sitting at my desk at home, right? You have to be out in front of people. So if you ask me even today, would I rather be here or would I rather be out in front of a customer having a face-to-face conversation? I will tell you that I always want the in-person conversation, right? I need that knowledge transfer. This trip that I just had to Pittsburgh and Detroit that we kind of talked about offline, one of the meetings was I went and got to visit a data center, right? And I sell products into a data center, right? So without seeing what those customers are doing with the product, it is almost impossible for me to articulate to another customer what the value is, or what are some best practices and stuff like that. So you kind of need to manage both. And sitting at home is a recipe for disaster, if you ask me. And you have to have discipline. And the good thing is, for most people, that comes out pretty quick. You'll know who is capable of doing it and who is not capable of doing it. You'll expose it, right? Mm-hmm. It might take 3 months, might take 6 months, but you generally know right away if someone's just not capable of self-managing. Mm-hmm. And it's all part of being kind of in a management, or at least in a leadership position, is sort of knowing who your people are, right? Your good people and your bad people, and who can self-manage, and you probably have it on set, right? You could send that guy off because you knew he could do it. Yeah. And you kind of figure that out in a hurry. Okay. So.
And then you're making your own schedule then? Like, you're the one that's kind of doing it, or is there like a built-in I
mean, I'm not necessarily making my own schedule, right? It's a 9 to 5. I mean, it's not 9 to 5 anymore, but I mean, I have to work Monday through Friday and make it happen, right? And if it doesn't happen, I'm either going to be out of a job, or, like I said, it's going to spill over into personal time, and maybe I'm working on the weekends because I slacked during the week, right? So... but it's you have more flexibility, right? Sure. So that's the value add from a just your quality of life experience working from home. But
yeah. I mean, I'm like a big fan of like making all these tricks to like make myself, like you described, like kind of putting on a suit, like. And I read something about this writer who wrote from his apartment, but he'd get up, put on a suit, walk around his block, get coffee, and then go back to work. Right. And then he could work from home. Like for me, like I'm back on like this kind of slight fitness regimen, and it really helps, wake up, do my sit-ups, do my whatever. And like that helps me just lock in. But kind of a thing I had in New York for many years is I just had like this office. It was a co-working space. And it was like none of us had to be there. Like we were all different companies, essentially, and it cost me money to be there. But the psychological aspect of I'm leaving house, I'm going to work every day, kind of gave me the opportunity to like, I got to go to the office because that's where I go. And so you'd see people who didn't come to the office, and you're like, oh, that person isn't good at self-managing or what have you. But when you're working from home, it's like kind of trying to create those moments where, like that string light I have, the red light, I don't turn that on until I start working. So, like for me, that's like a Pavlovian response. Right. It's like, like I'm open for business, I turn that light on, and that's like, it looks cool, but I don't get to have a cool looking light unless I'm locked in doing stuff. Yep. So to me, it's trying to create these kind of slight guardrails against, like especially early in COVID when, that was my first time really, really working from home. I mean, way back in New York, I worked from home a lot too, but where it was like, I didn't have a business partner. It was just me. And it's like, how do I keep myself on track? It's like creating these little mental tricks was for me what I needed to do.
Yeah, and I seen that with you with, like, even when we first started doing business, it was just like, I need to get a weekly call going or a weekly schedule. I feel like that would be extremely beneficial. So like you said, just kind of tricking your mind into thinking like, all right, every weekday at Monday at 5 o'clock, you could expect a call from me, or just getting yourself into a routine. It seems like that's what
we're
helps.
all creatures of habit, right? So whatever little routines, and everybody's different, right? So there's no instruction manual for kind of working from home or self-managing. Yeah, we all have our little tricks, and
but to Joe's point, it's like, to me, the in-person experience of working together, film, obviously it's an in-person business, but just even having that office, like, the amount of information you can convey in a person-to-person conversation versus even Zoom. It's like you can see body language, see how somebody sits, how they hold their coffee, like all this kind of stuff that you're not going to see over a screen. And so I'm a big fan of like having offices, having spaces dedicated to work. It's much easier to have. The
truth. It really scares me because, I mean, obviously I've seen sort of the breakdown when it comes post-COVID where everybody wants to work from home or thinks they want to work from home. And it's kind of scary because that knowledge transfer that occurs in face-to-face conversations, I think, is also one of the things that we sort of lost or have damaged as part of this, post-COVID world we live in. And God, I really hope we get back to it. It's still a challenge. I mean, obviously, I still have a very difficult time getting face-to-face meetings because of people working from home, and it's just not convenient for them to come into the office and to meet me in the office, whatever it might be. But I think that's one of those potential challenges that we'll see the unfortunate results of going forward. But man, it's
tough.
Face-to-face is so much better. I mean, if this is a life lesson, is don't sit at home, get out.
And there's like a lot of waste, definitely. Like I've definitely had meetings where people are like, let's have a meeting. And it's like, let's not have a meeting. You know what I mean? So I think that's the danger of face-to-face. But to me, the benefits far outweigh the costs. And, I just think like when you're like that kind of foxhole mentality, like this is our group, this is what we do, even if somebody like I had this one job, I was editing this show and there were like kind of 3 of us editors, there's a 4th editor, like we had 2 assistants, we had a showrunner who was kind of our boss, and his boss was the owner of the production company who wouldn't come in every day, and then we had a researcher, and like one of the editors was terrible, and he would just like not, he would hang out in the kitchen and try and extend every conversation like 5-10 minutes longer than it needed to be, and like make every joke in the meeting last like 2-3 punchlines longer than needed to be. But what happened was, in a way, everybody was like eye rolling at this guy, but he kind of also united us in a way of like, oh, we have this one person that is like the office joke, or even that Prudential shoot I had where like it was super tough. I had a producer working with me, the agency I was working with, it was a big deal for them. It was a big look for them. Prudential was taking a big risk, putting this much money into a shoot, all this stuff. So everybody had something to lose and gain, and it was tense. But at the end, there was this one person who had just gotten hired, or like was an intern and just got promoted, or someone who just like came onto the team late and like just didn't get it, and we could all laugh at this person and like, can you believe that she sent this email, and like it kind of like was this like release valve of like this one joke made us all be able to work together kind of and finish the project. And so you need those types of things, and ultimately, like I think as human beings, we're social species. We get along, we figure out kind of where we fit and how we can be together. And you need, like, to me, I think you can always achieve more things, like, as a group than you can as an individual, right? Like there's an African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with people. And so to me, like building teams and building groups of people, that happens because you have the person-to-person interaction, you have the jokes, you might go for that beer after work, you might meet up for coffee on a whatever, catch a ball game, whatever the thing is that you're going to do that has like this kind of softer texture of humanity to it. That's what bonds us.
Absolutely. Dang, go permit. No, absolutely. I wanted to ask kind of
so before you get on, I mean, one of the other things is, right, you mentioned like sometimes there's negative, right? Someone's running a meeting too longer than it really needs to go, but that's a learning experience, right? And that's being missed as well, is even the negatives of some of those face-to-face interactions are something that you actually derive knowledge from or learn, or, oh, okay, I don't want to be the person who kind of, has the inappropriate jokes or, stretches a meeting out longer than it really needs to be and gets to the point, right? You won't learn those, right? So
no, for sure. I mean, I was gonna say, like, when I got my first like office job going in person, it was definitely a learning experience for me. Just the way that I even the way I talk to like my coworkers, like knowing that like I could have a conversation with you or have a conversation with you and just regardless if we're on here, personal, it's going to be the same. Like, I'm going to talk the way that I talk. I'm not going to put on a show just because it's whatever. But having those conversations when you go into an office and you're talking to your boss, you kind of have to flip a switch and like, hey, well, you know, like, I can't say yo, I can't say bro, I can't say certain things. And eventually I did get checked one time. Like, she was like, oh, can you come into my office real quick? I got to talk to you about something small. And she talked to me. She was like, hey, like, you know, you can't go around the office and talk to people like this in a certain way. And I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. For one, like, first of all, I would understand if I'm talking to a customer, but the second thing is like, I'm just talking to, you know, people around the office, but it's just like, you got to get checked in a sense and have those experiences to learn something, kind of, you know, going off your point. So I don't know. It just feels all like superficial to me. I don't know. The business kind of like putting on that fake screen, but I guess you got to do it sometimes if you know, want to go further in your career with doing those type of things. I wanted to ask you real quick, if anyone didn't have anything about that. You know, you said you lived in Boston, you lived in New York, and now you're moved out to Chester County. Obviously a place that means a lot to you, but I want to know the pros and cons, I guess, between the two, besides the obvious of like not being around people. But I just want to hear from you, and then why it is that you did come out here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, I moved out here in part because it's always been a special place in my life. My grandparents taught at Lincoln University, and so when I grew up in D.C., it was a 2-hour drive. So we were up here, you know, in the summer, like, it felt like every other weekend. Or, you know, I remember I got chicken pox when I was 3, and like my mom just like picked me up from school and like drove up to Lincoln. I was there for a month, or, you know. But even through my teens, even after we moved to Boston, me and my mom would still like, let's go to Lincoln. We would just like hop in the car, 6-hour drive, you know, and just come down. So it's always kind of been for me a special place. And you know, having grown up in DC, where this DC I grew up in that I described, like, doesn't exist anymore. DC is like now a majority white city. My neighborhood I grew up in is a white neighborhood now. Like, you know, like, it's just, everything is so different. So like my hometown isn't the same anymore. Boston never quite felt like, even though I'm wearing a Red Sox hat, you know, it's like, you know, just, yeah, Boston's a very racist town, and I'll say it that way. And so you feel that you go places and, you know, you get called and you get whatever, all that stuff. So
is that today, or this is a while ago?
And in the 90s, I mean, I assume it's still today. I mean, you know, I remember reading a story about Marcus Smart on the Celtics. And they just won a game, and he comes out and some lady yells the N-word at him. And that's like, you know, 3 years ago or whatever. So it's kind of like, you know, Boston just has that culturally. So there are things I love about Boston, but there's a certain way that it's like I never quite felt totally at home, other than like inside of my mom's house, you know. Yeah. But it's like, you know, out in the city at large, it's not always the most hospitable place. Whereas like this, you know, New York or Brooklyn for me was the first place where I felt like I was there and nobody minded me being there. You know, that's like you know, my whole life. It's like I go to Starbucks, I go to, you know, and people look at me like, what are you doing here? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, whereas like when I was in Brooklyn, like, not only do you not feel that sense of judgment, like, what are you doing here? I felt like I was a part of the thing moving forward. Like, you know, like I was welcome to be there. And so that's probably the most difficult part about being here now, even though it's such a special place to me, is like, I feel like I stick out all the time, which I do, but also like people need to just get used to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, what do you want me to do at this point? I'm in my 40s. And then, but I would say the advantages of being here is, the first thing I always say is I get to see the sunset every single day. You know, when you're living in a big city, you know, New York City and over the, you know, even Brooklyn, like, they changed the zoning laws. I was there for 15 years, right before I moved. So by the end, like, in my office, for instance, if I stayed up many times all night working, and like, you know, you get the sunrise at 6 a.m. and the light would come into the office, and there's this beautiful golden light, and similar in the afternoon, with this beautiful golden light on the other side of the building, you could actually see the Lady Liberty, the Statue of Liberty, like way out in the bay. Like, it was small, but you could see Statue of Liberty. And by the end, like, there were just all these super towers just went up, and we lost our sunrise light, we lost our afternoon light, and it was just like everything was different. And so being here where you can see the sunset every single day. Like, it's a very small thing, but that's the thing I'm very kind of grateful and thankful for.
Yeah. Even something like the stars too, like with the light pollution. Like my girlfriend, she went to Widener. I spent a lot of time in Chester, down there with her. And like, even in a city like that, a smaller city as compared to New York, you can't really see the stars because of all the light down there.
Yeah.
And like, you come out here and
sadly, it's gotten worse even here. With the light pollution.
For sure. But like, at least, when I walk out to, whether go take her out to her car or whatever, I look up and you can see just like a skyline of stars. It's like, damn, I never want to leave. You know what I mean? It's super, super dope. You talk about your grandparents' house. That's now your current residence. I remember, I don't know, maybe we might have to cut this out or not, but you said you took a bet on the house. Like you said, like you had a bunch of was it like a stock, and you were like, I'm definitely gonna, cash in on those chips. I don't know if you want to talk about that or.
Sure. I mean, I would say, the by far the best financial decision of my life is I bought Tesla stock 2 weeks after the IPO, $15 a share. I tweeted about it publicly. I told everybody, I said, hey guys,
I love this story.
Tesla just IPO'd 2 weeks ago. Stock shares are $15. Who's with me? And I put in, say $300, maybe it's $500. It was like whatever I could afford. I'm not like a big time investor. I'm like a guy who, has $300, to buy a pair of Nikes every now and then. So I put that in. I just held it. That was the most important thing. I was holding it for 10 years and, through thick and thin. And there were definitely like moments where I was like, I don't have any bread. Let me share. Sell a few shares, but I was just like, keep holding, like hold. And then I remember I was looking up in the pandemic. I was like, whoa, like Tesla stock is going crazy right now, and it was like 770 one day. And I was just like, holy, and so it was like I sold it at 962.
Ouch.
So it was just like kind of, if I kept that whole entire 500s, which I didn't, but if I kept the whole investment, I would have had $100,000.
Yeah.
So that was like a 2,000% kind of gain. But and I bought more something, so I tweeted, though my only 2 stock tweets ever were like buy Tesla, both in 2010. You can look them up. TSLA, I used their stock ticker number. I was right about that, baby. It's good to be right about something every now and then. So that kind of, in a time when the pandemic hit, like nobody called me like for work. Like there was like, it was a situation where like, I had clients, I had various things happening, and then it was just like, I don't have anything, and I don't know when I'll get anything. Everybody thinks they're gonna die, and so I moved up to Boston at first, like very early in the pandemic. Was living with my mom, but I was still paying rent both at my apartment and at my office in Brooklyn for months, and I was just like, these people are gonna bleed me dry. Like I don't know what's gonna happen here, and so just. It was just like when I checked my, because I'm not one of those guys who checks the prices every day on stocks and stuff like that. I don't live and die by it.
They say that you shouldn't either. I don't
No, you should not.
They say you shouldn't, for the record.
But when I did, I was like, oh, okay, that like gave me this peace of mind. So I'm just always been a big believer in the stock market and investing in American businesses, and kind of just it's one of the there's the uber wealthy people. Where do they put their money? Right, in the stock market. Right, so they can find these pre-IPO deals, and there's deals available to super rich people that's not available to us as like over-the-counter investors. But at the same time, there's a lot. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, like did everything on the stock market.
Yep.
So it's like we can do this. Robinhood app is the one I use, or E-Trade I also use, and whatever. And it's just like, $7 a trade, or Robinhood's free for trade. It's like. If you have a good idea, I'm a big believer. Like what it was is my mom would always say, she's like, man, I wish I bought stock in Kentucky Fried Chicken. She's like, when they first came out with Kentucky Fried Chicken in the 60s, we were like, yo, like, what is this? And she was always like, I wish I just bought stock in that.
Yeah.
So for me, when I'm just always kind of observing the culture, and when I see something I think is good, try and pick up a couple shares.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I think that like people just started seeing that with NVIDIA. Like there was a thing that came out. I think the people, because I guess the employees obviously get a share, get something of NVIDIA when they work there. They're getting so much money from the stock that they're actually like, I think, slowing production down because they're like, yo, we're all like rich now because of these stocks. So, it's good to invest in that. And we didn't even touch on any of the unarmed stuff or the Wii stuff. I don't know on time crunch for either of us or anyone. If I don't want to do it a disjustice, but if you want to talk about that briefly or real quick. Before we kind of wrap up, I'd love to get that message out there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, briefly, I was kind of starting to do a couple of streetwear projects, and it was around the time that Trayvon Martin was killed and in Florida, and I was like, I remember because Obama was president, Eric Holder was the attorney general, and so I was in Seattle for a shoot with a buddy, and he's like, I'm going to this Trayvon Martin protest. And I was like, why would we do that? I mean, we got a black president, we got a black, attorney general. This is clearly like an injustice. Like, we're good, and then like the guy got off. And like, to me, that feeling of like there's a picture of Trayvon Martin in his kitchen and that one of his parents must have taken that like looks exactly like this picture my mom took of me in the kitchen at the same age. And I was just like it just like the sense of identification with his story, particularly the injustice of it. It really hit me. And I can remember various black folks being killed by the police and all these protests and getting these emails and what are we going to do about it? And so this was 2013. And I was like, man, somebody needs to put these people on a team. And so I just, it was that weekend of the Trayvon Martin verdict was a Friday. The film Fruitvale Station came out that same Friday, which was about the Oscar Grant case in Oakland, which was another one of these shot by the Bay Area rapid transit guy on the train on New Year's. And I just remember the emails from that, and I was just like I was in the movie theater crying like so many times, like 4 or 5 times, just like, oh God, and like the scene when Michael B. Jordan hugs that dog, I was done, bro. I was like out here like this. And so I just was like, let me design a sports jersey, with the team name Unarmed. And that was the first jersey that I designed, was for Trayvon Martin. And it was just like that. I just put it on Twitter, same thing as my Tesla stock pick. Just like, here's the thing, put it on Twitter, and then incrementally over the years, with Sandra Bland, Alton Sterling, I remember the case in Oklahoma. I'm blanking on the name. Number 40. God, this hurts me because I designed the jersey on my birthday. I remember like the guy been shot in Tulsa, and even Donald Trump was like, he's like, what he's like, what happened here? Like it was just like one of these things. If you see the video, where the guy just gets shot by the cop, like for no reason,
mm-hmm.
and I was just like, I got to design a jersey for this guy. And so, Terrence Crutcher. The Terrence Crutcher case, it was during the campaign, the 2016. And like, it was just like one of those things where it's just like, these murders are so horrific,
mm-hmm.
and there's no moral anything about this, like half of these, if you watch the Samuel DeBose Cincinnati, it was just like he was sitting in his car, like I just shot him. You know what I mean? Like it's like we talk about addressing a problem directly, right? And it's like if somebody's having a problem, if you're like a police officer, it's like, how do you address the problem? How do you de-escalate the situation? Why are so many people getting killed for no reason? And certainly, like as a black person, like I've had any number of interactions with police where it's like, it didn't have to go like that. Like whatever the situation was, it didn't have to go like that. And so, it was just kind of a deeply felt thing of just designing these jerseys and putting them on social media.
Mm-hmm.
That was just kind of an art project, like a graphic design project. That people are always like, oh, you got to do a T-shirt or you got to blah, blah, blah. And, after the George Floyd incident, and that was another one where I was just like, man, I don't want to do this. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason for me to be designing these jerseys. There's no actual, like, this shouldn't happen. And I was sitting there for a week like, oh God, you know, and the thing that got me was like, it's like, man, if I don't design a jersey for this guy, then nobody's going to design a jersey for him. Mm-hmm. And so I was just like, well, I'll just do it. You know, I'll just do it and put it on social media, and then I'll be,
just like feel like you're doing your part.
Yeah. Just like, hey, you know, I said what I had to say. And, you know, obviously the country was at a very, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, all this stuff is happening. And that just got a lot of traction on social media, and someone reached out to me and said, hey, I have, you know, a printing company. I can print some of these. And so we did, and we put them up in New York, and it was just like, you know, like I was on TV like 4 times that first week, you know, like, you know, and it was just like I remember like filming, putting them up, and you would just see people like stop on the street and just take a picture of every single jersey on their phone. They would stop and take a picture, and it's like, well, this is a message, you know, this Unarmed is a way of talking about this issue that's very difficult, very emotional, very, you know, just kind of, it shouldn't be divisive, but it is for some people. It's a way of talking about it that puts it directly to the point, which is if these people were on a team, this never would have happened to them. And so it kind of made it easy to have a lot of difficult conversations. And so that fall, I went across the country to all these kind of cities, putting more jerseys up in different cities at art galleries and various spaces. And, you know, it was a really powerful experience. I mean, a lot of people cried. You know, a lot of it made me understand like what it means to be an artist, which is that it's your own expression, your work, but it reaches an audience, and to do that in a way that you can feel it's the thing that you're doing is part of this larger conversation. To me, that was a really powerful feeling, and something that you can't have in film. In film, everything's planned out to a T, months and months out from when you do it. And so you're always like, it's very hard as a filmmaker to like do something and the next day, like, you know, it's done and people are seeing it. Whereas like, you know, like a musician, like you have this guitar there, like you strum the note, people feel it. And that was the closest I'd ever felt like as a creative person to like, I'm saying something and it's reverberating outwards like in the moment that I'm saying it. And that was just a tremendously kind of powerful feeling. And one of the things that like just made me want to say, well, you know, as a filmmaker, I've made one feature that I wrote, and then the doc for Prudential, which I technically was a writer, as a documentary, so who cares who wrote it. But like having, you know, my main focus in all of this, or, you know, like I said, 2/3 of my work has been in the advertising industry. It's about like telling stories in a very concise way, and you know, like kind of not about like over talking, overdoing, but like what's the most efficient way to convey this image or this idea. In many cases about a brand, but this was just, I'm trying to convey an idea about a feeling of right. being that feeling I said of not being at home, not feeling at home. You know, it's like, how can I convey that? And to me, this jersey and this project is something I feel like I can do that.
And like symbolizes that, absolutely. Now you also have, you know, a secondary brand to it, which is We. Is that, how does that play into the overall picture for the people who are listening to the Unarmed brand? Yeah,
I mean, I think, you know, I think somehow in America, and first of all, I love America, right? I've driven cross country probably 4 different times, including this one trip, which was 6 months. You know, I love going to various different states, going to different places, and going to bars and talking to guys, shooning pool, like playing basketball, whatever the thing is, right?
Talking to the bikers, you said.
I'll talk to anybody, you know, and you know, and getting hired to do this stuff. I've gone all these different places and met all these different kinds of people. But I think one of the ways that we've gotten off track as a country is, you know, this idea of the rugged individualist, like me, you know, like there's that meme, you know, on Reddit, like, I'm the main character. When, you know, people like all these people on airports and like, you can't stop, you know, and they're just wiling out, and it's like they think they're the main character in life. And it's like, actually, you know, we the people, like us, like the group, you know, the herd, you know, like what are we doing about us? Like yes, we all have, you can't help but to be selfish because you're your own self and you have your own point of view and your own perspective. But like, to the extent that anybody's willing to talk about, like, how does this benefit all of us? How do we all come together? Is there room for all of us to sit at the same table? Like, to me, the we idea is just about that. It's like, you know, unarmed is very specific to like a kind of, you know, a kind of difficulty in society, but like underlying that idea is, to me, the idea of love. And when you think of like we, it's like, you think of a family, it's like your mom's always gonna love the baby, and you know, like you know, grandparents, like the reason I'm here is because of my grandparents, right? Like this idea of a wider collective than just oneself, is a thing that I think is just, in modern society, social media, everybody's taking selfies all day.
It's like strength in numbers is what you're. You know.
Yeah, I had this one time. I you know, in film projects, you meet everybody, you're on the set, and then you exchange. So I met a person, and their entire account was selfies.
Yeah.
Like every single thing was about themselves, and like it's just like, I am happy about various aspects of myself, unhappy about various other aspects of it, but I don't actually want, like, that can't be the message, right? And like, if we're lucky, you know, it's like some proverb, I think it's Japanese or something. It's like, the luckiest thing is like, if the grandfather dies before the father, if the father dies before the son, right? Like the kind of transition of knowledge, that idea you talked about, or just kind of this wider group of people, like how can we all fit together? And so to me, like, one of the cool things about making clothes is about, like, you wear it on your body. I'm wearing you guys' clothes right now. I love it. I bought it. You know, I didn't ask for it. I said, this is a great sweatshirt. I want to have this, put it on myself. This idea resonates with
Buying
me.
into the brand.
And I want to put it out to other people. To me, if we could transmit that idea of togetherness, of a wider collective, of like we all have a part to play in this thing moving forward, I would love to transmit that idea.
Fantastic. No, that's, you know, really well spoken, and thank you again for sharing that. I wanted you, I didn't want to glimpse over the fact of that, because I know how important and how, you know, how strong of a message, you know, Unarmed and we is as a brand, as a movement, XY, like as many things as you want to call it, you know, how it's strong it is as itself. So, you know, and another thing, talking about branding, like, we were having a conversation today about clothes, and like how when you buy into clothes specifically, you're not buying into like the threads, you're buying into the ideology of that brand, like what that brand represents. So, you know, that's exactly on, you know, you kind of just hit the nail right on the head with that. But where can the people find you? You know, I don't want to end on that, you know, sad note. So, you know, where can the people find you? Where can they find the brand? Where are you at?
I'm online, you know, generally on most platforms. Raafi Rivero, 2 A's, you know, 1 F, you know, like my report card.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
And then, you know, unarmed.co is the website where you can find more about Unarmed. You know, and that's you can find everything else about me from any of those sources.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. And if you want to follow him on Twitter, it sounds like he gives out great what do you call it, stock advice. You know, so there you go. All right, but yeah, episode 65 in the bag. Thank you so much again, brother, for coming on here.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Everyone listening, have a great day.
Peace out.
Peace.
Peace.